What the fuck? Sorry, I didn't turn it on. I didn't ask it to start recording. And for some weird fucking retarded reason, it just starts recording on its own. Like the timer went off because I opened the fucking app. Ugh. Anyway. Oh man, I've lost a lot of muscle. Long story. I'm thoroughly convinced that white Christians may be the most dishonest or dumbest drug addicted people. But that's a pretty tough competition. Because like all these different groups are dumb, dishonest, and drug addicted. But, geez, where to begin? So, here where I'm living, we'll do a timeline. Here where I'm living, there was a bunch of weed smoke in the house in December. And I thought, well, maybe someone outside is smoking weed near the cooler heater unit, and the intake fan was sucking the smoke inside the house, and it was going through the whole house through the vents. But I went downstairs, and it definitely stank like weed downstairs. Nobody else was home but me, or so I thought. But then I heard a noise like someone was inside the house, inside a room to the back, that I don't really pay attention to that room or anything. It's not my living space. But yeah, it sounded like somebody was home, and then the roommates came home, and I started texting the guy, and he's like, oh yeah, but I smell it all the time. That was a lie. Like, I keep a track of when I do and don't smell it. I literally document, is it 3 times per day, 3 times per week, how many times per month, time, location, duration, preventative measures, countermeasures, all kinds of stuff. I quantify these things. But they did just pull back up in their car, and he had his cousin over, so I'm thinking his guests are weed smokers. And they've already left now, thank God, but he lied. As a Christian, as a white Christian. And then I went downstairs, like I was supposed to go down and hang out with them for Christmas, I guess, and I didn't realize that because my, schizophrenic paranoia, I was very socially withdrawn. And, he texted me like, man, I thought you'd come down, da-da-da-da-da. So I went down and hung out with him afterwards the next day for a little while. And I saw hemp cake frosting, hemps with the letter Z on the end of it. And I realized they are not drug-free. They are definitely doing the drugs. Hemp is a drug, CBD is a drug. If it's not a drug, how is it medicinal? I know there's all kinds of aggressive liars and weird, like, corporate agent accounts, government thing, but it's a drug. And the only other time I've seen that company logo was at the pastor's office in North Carolina, who's this guy's brother, who got me in to move in with this guy. And he had a soap made out of the weed. So my whole goal of getting away from drugs through Christianity, Christians are very drugged out and degenerate. They can't live without drugs. It's insane to me. Just as a whole, I have not met a single Christian church that even the Methodists and, all these Baptists and all these Christian churches that are supposed to technically, by their doctrine, abstain from, substances, they don't. Sorry, I'm in a little bit of residual impact from yesterday's cannabis-induced psychosis from involuntary exposure. Right, yeah. So the Christians are lying, and they're drug addicts. Roommate came home again about a week ago now. He stank like marijuana. Now, I assumed his ability to resist his excitement over Trump getting elected and weed being legalized he would not have the threshold capacity to resist relapse. And I think he did relapse. The only thing I know for certain is he's a liar, because he's lied to me before. The whole reason I moved in with these people was it was supposed to be a drug-free living situation, and then he did a mushroom, psychedelic mushroom deal right in front of me. So, white Christians, that's all I know is I can't trust white liberals from Vashon. I can't trust my own race, Mexicans or Catholics. Like, they're all liars and drugged out degenerates, both of those groups. So I thought white Christian conservatives would be the ones that were, like, honest and drug-free. They're not. Hashtag Virginia, hashtag North Carolina. And Christianity is too weak and gullible to resist social engineering through media. The marijuana, the industry, it's all through advertising and marijuana propaganda through all different types of media, Hollywood, television, social media, apps, etc. There's a lot of money that goes into the advertising of the industry. Anyway, so yeah, he came home, stank like weed. I'm pretty sure he was high. I'm pretty sure they've relapsed. I know the wife would get really, like, bitchy about her defense of marijuana because she's programmed, presumably like he is, by social media. They believed that Trump had built the wall because it said so on the TikTok and the Facebook, and they saw pictures and headlines about it, so it must be true because it was on the internet. And so the most gullibility that I've seen here is in the Christians, to just believe the dumbest, most heinously idiotic internet content, just lies they see on the internet. Oh yeah, Trump built the wall and marijuana helps people and da 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 da. So they're programmed by the smartphones. And this is decades of indoctrination, of brainwashing, of marijuana propaganda in the 1990s and the 1980s and the 2010s and 2000s, etc. So that definitely I find compelling. Yesterday, I went to the pro-life march in Washington, D.C. And prior to that, I had texted the pastor in North Carolina who got me in here. And I told him all this stuff that I'm telling, you viewers here, that I think Christians have got to be the dumbest and most dishonest bunch of people. And I'm not even telling him everything. I'm not communicating a lot of stuff in here to this guy, because one thing I know for certain is I cannot trust whites or Christians or white Christians, because they're either going to be dumb or dishonest or both, but they're not going to reliably get me away from the secondhand marijuana. If anything, they're actually pushing it. They're the problem, not the solution, at least in this area. And anywhere else, let's just be honest. So I texted him and I said, so this is what and let me give you an example. I told the Christians at my church, secondhand marijuana sets off my schizophrenia. So they're taking me to the secondhand marijuana. Oh, secondhand marijuana sets off the schizophrenia? That means we need to force the marijuana on him in the name of Jesus as white Christians. The dumbest fucking shit I've ever seen. You're just like, really? Your brain doesn't connect these two things? Like, the words left my mouth, you don't believe me, even though I have fucking visible, undeniable proof that I'm not lying about this? Fucking genius. Holy shit. And so we went to the march, and for the first half of the day or more, it was fine. And nobody was smoking any weed. I occasionally smelled cigarette, but it was very faint and very far away. I saw feds, surveying us. I saw the FBI, or federal surveillance teams. One was on the roof. There was some drones. No big deal. But as we began to march on 9th and Constitution at 2:22 p.m., I got the first whiff of marijuana. And then it hit again really strong up until 12th and Constitution. Somebody in the pro-life crowd was smoking weed. Some Christian, conservative, MAGA hat wearing Trump supporter was doing drugs at the fucking pro-life rally. So the whole grift that, liberals and Democrats and the left are the bad morals and we're the good morals, that is bullshit. Trump supporters, just like Biden support, like fucking all parties, they're all degenerates. They're all drug addicted, lying, dumb scumbags. And the biggest proof of that is the fucking weed smokers at the fucking, pro-life thing. What a bunch of fucking shitbag degenerate morons, right? Oh, well, Trump said it's good, and he's like Jesus. So we're gonna worship anything he says is Bible. He would never lie for money. He loves America. Jesus, yeah, fucking right. So, as that happened, the deacon, I said, "Dude, I smell marijuana," and he said, "Well, we're in public in Washington, D.C., what do you expect?" So that means they fucking knew there would be weed at fucking the pro-life rally, and they took the schizophrenic whose schizophrenia set off by weed to the weed. They knew in advance before we left Lynchburg, and they fucking did it anyway. What a bunch of morons. Holy fuck. Like, is it stupidity, or are they just malicious, right? Is it evil? I'm gonna make him suffer. Right? Like, what the fuck? Symptoms include hallucinations, severe suicidal thoughts, and headache. The hallucination, there was an advertisement of like a sushi steak thing and a person eating it, and I saw it as a human foot with like a river of green stuff between the big toe to the ankle. I hallucinated that people were eating human body parts at a advertisement of a family eating dinner. And in that spirit, another thing that blows my mind, I can't focus, by the way, I'm supposed to be reading school material, but my focus is disrupted by the schizophrenia from the involuntary exposure, aka forced drugging to secondhand marijuana. But relevant to those last two videos, and I did want to set the map up, but the thing started recording. God damn it with the fucking light. So this blows my mind, right? This Jason Hayden beating this guy to death, he got off from diminished capacity. He did not get prosecuted. I don't know if they used a legal defense of cannabis-induced psychosis. I doubt they even tested him for cannabis, but I'm willing to bet cannabis setting off his schizophrenia, especially because Wisconsin is pushing the marijuana. Right, so he literally killed someone and got off on schizophrenia. I accosted a minor, and I did not get this legal defense. Arguably, what he did was far worse, and he got the legal defense of cannabis, or just psychosis, schizophrenia, diminished capacity. So my theory is, and this is pretty retarded, but true. I want to set the map up for this. Hang on. Okay. So my theory is that his thing was in Detroit. Where is Detroit? Oh, excuse me one sec. Detroit's in Indiana, right? South of Illinois. So roughly around here. This Facebook regional propaganda, right? The internet content in this region was different than the internet content in this region in 2009. The propaganda here in 2009 on Facebook was a different message than the propaganda here during 2019 in COVID. 10-year difference of regional internet propaganda. So over here's where my incident occurred. That means that the content all those people were seeing on Facebook was not published research about cannabis-inducing psychosis and schizophrenia. It was the opposite. It's aggressively weaponized propaganda and censorship, suppressing the research, much like my videos are suppressed and my views are suppressed on my videos, etc. It's a social engineering through social media. So because they did not see the truth about the connection between cannabis and psychosis on Vashon Island and the Puget Sound, likely that was a contributing factor to the circumstances of my prosecution and conviction. Another factor is my public defender gave zero effort to actually defend me. A third factor is the fact that I sought mental health treatment for my self-inflicted amputations, knowing something was wrong with my head, but not knowing what or why, or that marijuana was setting it off. So the government, local, county, state, and federal, all know that marijuana set off my schizophrenia, and they strategically and deliberately suppressed the truth, and suppressed the fact that I had schizophrenia and marijuana was setting it off, including secondhand. But during COVID, when they were pushing, legalization over here and all this stuff, it was all Black Lives Matter. So him getting off for schizophrenia had nothing to do with the fact that he was schizophrenic, and everything to do with the fact that he was black, and those are white liberals, just like the white liberals of Vashon Island and the Puget Sound, including white Ashkenazi Jews. And so it wasn't about the truth, it was about politically weaponized political propaganda on social media. Just some other case study comparisons. So there was this meme stoner guy, Kyle Braun, pretty glonky. Apparently, in cannabis-induced psychosis, he stabbed his mom and beat her. He stabbed her multiple times. Cops found her with the knife still sticking out of her head. That was in cannabis-induced psychosis. This guy isn't just white. He's white and likely Jewish. Braun is a German and German-Jewish last name. Indianapolis. Right, so this is a lie here. A motive is unclear. Yeah, it was the weed. I guarantee it. He's famous for marijuana. It was cannabis putting him in psychosis that caused the homicide. So why isn't he getting a diminished capacity defense? Why isn't he getting cannabis-induced psychosis as a legal defense? I mean, shouldn't the truth matter in court? That is objectively the truth. Is it because billionaire marijuana lobbyists like Elon Musk, etc., are just controlling the government through social media, through propaganda, regional propaganda, etc.? Mother is in critical condition. Right, so this guy is charged with attempted murder. He never got the cannabis-induced psychosis legal defense because he's white or white Jewish. And so then I just Googled cannabis-induced psychosis homicides. This woman, Bren Spedger, used to show up a lot, but finally we get some other ones here. Let's just look at the Irish Times. Yeah, this guy cut off his wife's head. This is not an isolated incident. Diego de Costa. Why is there beaners in Ireland? Look at the fucking globalism. He chopped off her head in cannabis-induced psychosis, and Ireland is actually saying, yeah. No, he smoked weed, he chopped off his wife's head, it was the weed. He found not guilty by reason of insanity because it was the weed. Now that blows my mind in itself. Why isn't Ireland then criminalizing marijuana? I mean, different states have different laws about this. Some states say that he willingly smoked the cannabis, then it's not a valid legal defense. Possessed by a serpent and shit. So here's the positive symptom presentation of cannabis-induced psychosis based on testimony of the assailant, the perpetrator. His trial heard that due to his mental disorder, right, that's unspecified, Mr. Costa Silva had come to believe that his wife was possessed by a serpent and she would kill him. After he attacking her by striking her on the head with a mug, strangling and stabbing her, he cut off her head, believing that he had to do it to make sure the serpent was dead. The serpent, that's interesting. But Wisconsin has laws about this, I think. If they willingly smoked the marijuana, then that negates cannabis-induced psychosis as a legal defense. Right? Oh, I didn't know it would send me into a psychotic episode. Yeah, I doubt that. There's no way these people have not been informed that marijuana sets off schizophrenia. Marijuana activates and exacerbates schizophrenia and other forms of psychosis. If this man, Mr. Da Silva, knew he had a mental disorder, and he's 37 years old, there's very, very small likelihood that no one in his life ever told him, including doctors, that cannabis activates and exacerbates psychosis disorders. It doesn't specify what his mental disorder is, but if it's in there, likely he had a pre-existing diagnosis. And he willingly chose to ignore the doctor's advice and smoke cannabis, and now his wife's dead. A similar story happened in America fairly recently. I think I cited it in the other videos. But, oh man, there's more. Australia. Oh, Australia. But how are these guys getting this legal defense? Jail for man who mistakenly killed his grandmother during a cannabis-induced psychosis episode. Right. James Kilroy, jury to decide whether cannabis psychosis can be a defense to murder. Man accused suffering from drug-induced psychosis. Yeah. So how are these guys getting this legal defense, but I didn't? Despite the fact that I have way more proof that I have schizophrenia and cannabis sets it off than they do. They can be faking a mental disorder to avoid legal consequences. No matter how good the forensic psychiatrist or psychologist may be, or whoever it is that's supposed to determine if they're faking it or not, people can be very, very good at faking these things. One thing you can't fake is self-inflicting 3 amputations with electricity for whales and trees. So, I didn't get this legal defense, but they did, even though they murdered people and I didn't. And despite all these homicides from white people, by the way, that was an interesting observation yesterday in the, pro-life march was the whites that I were with, for example, like everyone went through the secondhand marijuana exposure in that crowd. It wasn't just me. But the 5 white Christians that I were with, they were more or less fine, mostly unaffected by it, at least not visibly displaying any impairment to the point of, disruption of driving capacity or articulation capacity, etc. There was no visibly observable, externally observable signs that they were handicapped or impaired by the involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana. So, under identical conditions, they thrived where I could not overcome the adversity. I assume genetics were the largest contributing factor to that. I likely have a serotonin transporter gene, dopamine receptors, larger amygdalas that are different than theirs. But all these people are white. Kyle Braun is white. James Kilroy is white. There's others. Bryn Spedger, white Jewish, etc., etc., etc. Man who killed mom in cannabis-induced psychosis sentenced to 45 months. There's so many of these. Which one is this guy? Well, I mean, yeah. There's so many of these, it's insane. But you see these a lot. And all these people are white. So, Jesus fucking Christ. It's not even letting me look at the fucking article. Guess I gotta pay for a fucking subscription. So if you're black and you commit a crime in cannabis-induced psychosis, you get off scot-free because Black Lives Matter. But if you're white or Mexican and commit a crime in cannabis-induced psychosis, you don't get the free pass that the blacks do. I cannot ignore the causal component of psychologically manipulative social media influencing the judicial system and all levels of government, local, state, and federal, as well as church, of course. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state, but the church does not maintain its fortress walls to keep out the corrupting influence of social media from its, congregation, etc. They're not good at enforcing things with aggression. They're more pacifist. Oh yeah, black woman murdered a 66-year-old because she smoked weed. Right. Yeah. Wow. Huh. Anyway. So yeah. Insanity defense. Ahead of last week's trial, Janelle Baptiste pleaded not guilty with her lawyer arguing mental insanity. In the police interview played by court, Janelle Baptiste said she had smoked 5 joints, marijuana cigarettes, while at work. She worked briefly at Ross Freeman Tour, cleaning weed. While I cleaning, I smoking, she noted. And so the defense is set to present its case today at 10 a.m. with attorney Wendell Alexander recalling clinical and forensic psychologist Dr. James King as a key witness. Dr. King, who diagnosed Janelle Baptiste's cannabis-related disorders, will review the procedures of his evaluation of the accused. Alexander, whose case hinges of mental insanity, told the court the doctor's evidence is critical to the matter. So, if the government has known that cannabis causes psychosis, which results in suicides, homicides, vehicular fatalities, homelessness, harder drug use, various index crimes and non-index crimes, property crime, theft, etc., why are they legalizing it? I mean, I know the answer to that question, or I presume I know parts of the answer to that question: greed and corruption. But why is the government actively and aggressively enacting policies that are destructive towards its own citizens? I get it's a social engineering tool. It's also a social control mechanism. Marijuana is a smaller part of a larger plan, a globalist agenda. But shouldn't the government protect its people from the bankers, from these rich and corrupt elites? Isn't that part of the role of government? Not help the drug dealers and become the drug dealers? Shouldn't they protect us from the plutocracy, the 1%? Isn't government supposed to be, a bulwark so the rich and wealthy and powerful can't do this kind of shit to the poor? Obviously, I have no faith in whites or Christians to resist this thing. But shit, isn't the government atheist? Aren't they supposed to be, smarter than that?